Hi, I'm Reg Hartt, speaking to you from the Follows at the Cineforum in Toronto, which is in my home. I started it by accident in 1992. I had an altercation with some people in a bar I was using up the street. I had the place so full of people that, as W.C. Fields used to say, they couldn't applaud this way, they had to applaud that way. And bar sales were good. Great, as a matter of fact. And whoever you are, whatever you do, you walk into a desert, you turn it into a paradise. After about 6 months, everyone forgets that until you got there, this place was a desert. And they all start to think of what they can do without you, and then they start getting rude so they can squeeze you out. And when people start getting rude, I just figure it's time to leave. It's been time for me to leave Toronto for a long time, but I'm sticking it out because I have to. Anyway, I love 3D. I've loved 3D motion pictures. Well, I've loved 3D images. From the moment that I was a kid in New Brunswick, playing in my Uncle Jack's barn in, I forget the name of the little village he lived in, Cumberland Bay. And in the barn, I found an old style 1920s stereoscopic viewer with slides, and I didn't know what it was. So I put it up and put a slide in, and I went, woo! It was the first time I saw depth in a photograph, and I was sold on 3D from that moment on. There's a lot of folks that diss 3D on account of they have to wear glasses. Well, let them diss it. It's a magnificent medium that hasn't yet been fully explored. And to explore it, we've got to be able to look at as many of the motion pictures made in 3D as we can. Now, my interest in digital 3D began a few years ago when I was browsing on Jerry Beck's site Cartoon Research, which I cannot recommend highly enough. And I saw a Popeye cartoon from the 1940s that somebody had digitally converted into 3D. And I thought, how did they do that? So I did a web search to get information, and I found that a lot of the 1950s movies that were made in 3D, like House of Wax and Dial M for Murder and a few others, and some films from the 70s that were made in 3D, could be acquired on DVD in copies you just had to use red and blue glasses with. So I ordered them at once. If there's anything I hate about 3D, it's the ghosting of the image. And with red and blue 3D, you get a lot of ghosting. Then I discovered that there was this other process which had just come in called field sequential 3D. And this intrigued me. So I bought a set that would allow me to use it with my digital projectors. And I ordered a few digital field sequential 3D movies. And I had some brilliant people staying with me here at the time. Nima Hoda was one of the most brilliant. And we're still in touch. And we got the system in here wired for digital 3D, field sequential 3D. I bought the glasses and all that stuff, and holy cow, wow, what an experience seeing these films with no ghosting, and absolutely wonderful. And you've got images coming right off the screen right up to your nose. It's a long throw here. And I'm like, whoa, I'm sold on this. So I bought every field sequential DVD I could get my hands on. And the more I saw, the more I wanted to see. I did a web surf and I found other people offering these things. Whatever they offered, I bought multiple copies often to make sure I was getting the best of what I had and what was available. And the more I needed information. So I started looking for books on 3D. And one of the first I got was this one by R.M. Hayes. And this was a good beginning, but it's not a reliable book. The information is erroneous often, and it's a good thing to have, certainly, because there aren't that many books on 3D, and get them all. You know, whether they're good or bad, get them all. It's the same thing with the movies. Whether they're good or bad, get them all. Often the bad movies have more to teach us than the good ones. So make sure you see everything, which is what I do. Anyway, I got this book and I read it, and I set out to get as many of the films that were listed in here as I could. I also discovered online processes I could download and use for converting 2D movies into 3D, and I got those so I could convert the movies I couldn't see in true 3D into simulated 3D. And you know, those were okay for a time until I got real Blu-ray 3D copies of those movies, and then there was no comparison. Now, after having bought that, I got in touch with Mr. Ray Zone. Now, Ray Zone was called Mr. 3D. He made a lot of 3D comic books and stuff, and he knew more about 3D than most people alive. And he authored this book, Stereoscopic Cinema and the Origins of 3D Film, 1838 to 1952. It's a small book and loaded, but loaded with information. This is a vital book, and it belongs on every shelf. Having got that, there was also this book on Mr. Zone's site, and I ordered it. It's got this issue, 3D Cinema. And so I bought it, and I read it, and I've reread it, and it's gorgeous. Now, here's a book on Andre de Toth. It's called De Toth on De Toth. And Andre de Toth is important for making several of the best 3D movies. The first one being House of Wax for Warner Brothers, that put 3D on the map after, Buona Devil. Now, Buona Devil is yet to be released on home video and Blu-ray in 3D. I don't know why, because it's a pivotal film. It's as important in 3D cinema as The Birth of a Nation is in mainstream cinema, and The Jazz Singer is in terms of sound cinema. So this is Buona Devil is a vitally important film to have available in 3D. Somebody, whoever has the rights out there, please get in contact with Robert Furmanek of the 3D Film Archive and get them to do a restoration. These people do magnificent work at rock bottom prices, maybe because they're so cheap people don't value them. They just want to get this stuff restored. And every 3D movie made that hasn't yet been restored should be given to the 3D Film Archive. You folks with Mickey Spillane's I, the Jury in 3D, sitting on the rights for it in 3D. God damn it, get off your ass. Get in touch with Bob Furmanek. Get that film converted to 3D, proper 3D. It'll look better than it did in the 1950s. They'll be doing you a service. They'll be doing all of us a service. They'll be doing the history of the movies a service. Please, 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 get in touch with the 3D Film Archive and say, here, do your magic on my movie, please. And they will. And you'll be astounded at the results. Anyway, this is Andre de Toth talking about all of his films, not just the 3D ones. But de Toth was unique. He and Raoul Walsh both directed 3D films, and neither of them could see 3D because they were one-eyed men. But they knew filmmaking in their bones. They didn't need both eyes to make an awesome 3D movie. In fact, Jack Warner got a little bit concerned when de Toth was making House of Wax, when he realized he couldn't see in 3D, and de Toth said, look, I've studied the medium, I know what to do, trust me. And de Toth delivered huge. The House of Wax, it's a landmark film. The 3D photography in it is just incredible. It put 3D on the map after Buona Devil had brought it to the table. Now, this is a fun book, again by Ray Zone. It's interviews with 3D filmmakers. These are old filmmakers, Arch Obler, who did Buona Devil, contemporary filmmakers up to the time of its publication, people who made 3D films for IMAX 3D, and you're getting the words from the filmmakers. There's not an ounce of theory in any of these books. This is all real information from the people who made the movies, and I can't stress how vital that is. Avoid books on film theory like the plague. This is another fun 3D book. It's called Amazing 3D by Hal Morgan and Dan Symes. Dan Symes was a 3D filmmaker, and he knew his stuff. One of the great masters of 3D cinema. And I can't recommend this book highly enough. Illustrations are fantastic. Now we get to something for the contemporary filmmaker. It's 3D movie making, stereoscopic digital cinema from script to screen. For all you student filmmakers out there you want to make movies in 3D, this is a good place to start. Unfortunately, the enthusiasm for 3D is still lacking. I don't know why. I bought a ton, well, I bought 15 3D cameras from China, high-def digital 3D cameras, and gave them to friends to use. I thought they'd be enthusiastic. I thought they'd use them. They haven't. They're just sitting gathering dust. You know, when the movies first began, people dismissed them as illegitimate theater. And it took David Warwick Griffith to lift the movies out of the gutter and put them right on the stage, make them equal with live theater, what they call legitimate theater. He did that with The Birth of a Nation. If you're taking a film course anywhere on earth, they'll tell you that D.W. Griffith was a racist and The Birth of a Nation is a racist film. Neither statement is true. The importance of The Birth of a Nation is that it was released in 1915, the Liberty Theater in New York, 1,000 seats. Movies hadn't been seen in venues larger than 100 seats, really, and at nickel and dime prices. And The Birth of a Nation was released at top Broadway prices for 1915, $2 a seat, which today would be about $60 a seat. And everyone laughed and said the public wouldn't pay that kind of money for a movie. But the box office success of The Birth of a Nation just simply blew everyone out of the water and made the art form one that people wanted to work with and invest in. The same thing happened when James Cameron made Avatar. He made a first-class 3D movie. He made a huge, enormous box office hit. He blew all the naysayers out of the water and just trumped them to pieces with a superbly made film that is just awesome to look at again and again and again. I can't sing that man's praises too high. He's converted some of his past films, Gladiator, Terminator 2, and others, Titanic, into 3D. And God damn it, they're gorgeous to look at. If you haven't seen them in 3D, by all means do. Now here's another do-it-yourself 3D book. And this time it's by Ray Zone, who, again, as I cannot say loudly enough, was a master at the history of 3D, at making 3D comics, at 3D filmmaking. This man knew more in his toenail than most people know in their entire body, and all of his books are superbly illustrated, wonderfully deep with knowledge, and 3D is a medium that stresses depth. This is a must-buy book. Now here's the creme de la creme de la creme de la creme de la creme. It's the last book by Ray Zone, who unfortunately died way too early. It's called 3D Revolution, the History of Modern Stereoscopic Cinema. And God, every page is solid gold. So I can't recommend this highly enough. Now, more important than the books are the movies themselves. And I have every 3D motion picture I can get my hands on sitting on the shelf of my archive here at the Cineforum, going right back to early experiments done just so people could photograph flies flying. That comes from a wonderful documentary done by another 3D enthusiast, Brian May, of the band Queen. Brian May loves 3D with the same passion I love 3D, and he put together a beautiful, wonderful documentary on 3D, which is available on Vimeo, and I'll make a link to it. It's just an amazing medium. The problem with contemporary 3D is it's not really 3D, it's 2.5 3D. One of the things I learned reading Ray Zone's book is that the early 3D filmmakers felt that images coming off the screen into what they call Z-space are in bad taste. So they made movies that had all kinds of depth, but no use of Z-screen. No coming out at you. Well, when they took it to the theaters to have them show it, the people who ran the theaters said, it's not really very exciting. Make something exciting and then we'll talk to you. So then they went out and they made films with people coming out into the audience, really exciting stuff. And then the theaters went, yeah, I can fill my theater with that. And they began to show 3D movies. And the public liked them. The 3D's always been a difficult technology. It requires that you be alert and paying attention. Most movie theaters, projectionists in the day, were reading comic books between reels and stuff like that. I know this from direct experience, because when I took my cartoon festivals in 16 millimeter on the road the first time through, it was a disaster trying to get the projectionists to keep the things in focus and pay attention to what they were doing. And the second time through, I bought my own theatrical projector, which was way better than the cheap ones used in the theaters. And I brought my own person with me to answer to me, to make sure everything was done right. And I bought a third person to act as a go-between between me and my projectionist in the booth. And then the audiences in the theaters, which sometimes said 1,000 people and more, said, "Wow, we've never seen any movie in this theater look this good. What are you doing?" Well, what I'm doing is caring. And when we care, when we really care, we want to know everything there is to know. Not just the little bits that Time Magazine gives us so we can talk about at a party, but everything. And I know just about everything there is to know about 3D. Mind you, I'm still learning. Every time I look at a 3D movie, I'm learning. We learn through observation and repetition. Buster Keaton, as a kid, live in theaters where his parents played in the days of vaudeville, would watch people like Harry Houdini and others of that caliber performing their material. And that kid watched and watched and watched and absorbed and absorbed and absorbed. And that's what I want you to do if you're in Toronto or the Toronto area. Come to the Cineforum for my 3D programs and watch and watch and watch. Don't get theories. Theories get in the way of seeing. Don't come with any kind of feelings at all. Just come to see. And the more you see, if you're like me, the more you're going to want to see. It's a pleasure to share this wonderful medium with you. I'm looking forward to creating the first generation of 3D filmmakers as literate in the history of the cinema and 3D filmmaking as that generation that created films in Paris after spending their youth in the wonderful Cinematheque of Henri Langlois, who has been the inspiration for my work all along. Henri Langlois and Claude Chabrol set up showing movies from the beginning of cinema up to the moment in an old house in Paris. And they showed films to Francois Truffaut, Alain Resnais, the whole generation of young men who became the new wave cinema of Paris, France, in the 1950s. We've never had a generation of filmmakers in Canada literate in the history of the cinema. In Celtic poetry, you were not allowed to write a single word, a single line, until every poem that had ever been written was alive in our head. And then we had to have the balls to add to that great stock of information and poetry and wonder and magic. And 3D encompasses all of that. It's a beautiful medium full of poetry and wonder and magic, and it's my pleasure to open up the doors to it to you. This is Ali Baba's Cave here in Toronto. Come and take a look at the treasures. Thank you, Reg Hartt, Toronto, Canada, from the Omphalos at the Cineforum. Drop by and say hello. There's a beer store across the road. Pick up a 6-pack or whatever. Well, pick up a 24. There's a liquor store around the corner. Pick up a bottle of whatever you'd like. You know, those great pioneer filmmakers were hard-drinking men. Hard-loving men, too. We seem to have created a generation of folks who don't drink and don't make love. Well, we need more people who drink and make love and share my love for this wonderful medium of 3D cinema. Thank you. Goodbye.